Hello again. Bernie Miklasz back with you on this Thursday in St. Louis. And welcome to the Bernie Miklasz Show on YouTube. Thanks for your support. And thank you for subscribing and all the comments you've left since we opened this channel back in late summer. We're going to talk about the St. Louis Blues today. I got a little, what's the word? I overreacted to the positive start after Jim Montgomery took over. And, the initial buzz faded. They played really bad for a while, but they've been, after being sort of pretty much counted out by everybody, they have rallied and they're playing some of their best hockey, maybe even their best hockey of the season. So now they're all of a sudden in the playoff race. I'm telling Blues fans what they already know. This is more about just kind of general feelings, general observations, because they're also up against the trade deadline on Friday. So what do the Blues do? So let's just take a step back, take a good pan out, take a good look at the Blues. More and more we hear the word vibe in talking about teams in any sport. And you know what I'm talking about. Like you look at the Chiefs, people say, boy, that team in Kansas City, they've had a great vibe for a long time. The NBA team in Boston, Jason Tatum and the Celtics, that's a team. Oh, man, they got a fantastic vibe. Then on the other hand, you look at one of the both of the New York football teams, but the Jets last year in particular. You look at that team and say, man, that team's got some bad vibe. There's a lot of bad vibes going on there. You could say that about any losing team that has not really experienced any kind of winning in a long time, and they always screw some things up. You look at Mizzou football and Mizzou basketball, even though the basketball Tigers are not playing all that well lately, still good vibe in the football program, good football in the good vibe in the football program. Hey, the Washington Commanders, man, that team had a bad vibe, bad moon rising for decades with Daniel Snyder as the owner. New owner, new quarterback, new head coach. All of a sudden, the vibe is awesome. So it can change in a hurry. So I will say this. In my decades of covering professional sports, no league personifies the concept of good vibe than NHL teams. It's a warrior sport. It comes with pain and sacrifice. An NHL team runs 4 different lines. The lines are always changing. An NHL team uses 3 sets of defensive pairings. Nothing ever stays the same. Guys get benched. They're healthy scratches. They're in the lineup. They're moving all around. And man, when you have to evolve that much, it's really a challenge because, how do you keep the room in great shape as far as morale and character and everything else? I mean, you're always adjusting new line mates, new defensive partners. It's a big challenge to establish chemistry, and NHL teams have to do it on the fly a lot of times on short notice. And players never really know when the lines combination is going to switch and what it means for them and the defensive pairings. Okay, we're going to make a change. Well, what does that mean for me? When I can only imagine if you're a St. Louis Blue and you're playing on a line that you love to play on, and all of a sudden you're kicked down a couple lines. It's not. Yeah, you're going to be a good teammate, but deep down inside, you're probably hurt. You're hurting a little bit. Your morale kind of goes down a little bit. So anyway, I think I've done enough of a background explaining the concept of vibe. All right. So it leads me to the St. Louis Blues. Not too long ago, like I mentioned, they were all but dead in the Western Conference wildcard race. But there's been a rival. They had 2 pretty good games. They got 3 out of a possible 4 points before the break for the Four Nations tournament. And so if you include those 2 games before that break, they're 6-1-1 in their last 8 games. And they are 5-1, the Blues, since coming back from the break during the Four Nations tournament. And after Wednesday's 3-2 shootout win in LA over the Kings, the good vibes were definitely buzzing in the Blues locker room. The post-game quotes were pretty amazing. I mean, I was laughing at them. And when I say I wasn't laughing, when I said I was laughing at him, it wasn't to make fun of him or to be critical. No, they're pretty amazing because you just don't see quotes like this very often. And Jordan Binnington, the excellent goaltender, I think he personified this the most when he said, and I quote, and I know you could read this at The Athletic or the STL Today, NHL.com, but I'm just saying, I want to read it to you if you didn't see it. And this is Jordan Binnington, quote, "I would say the word is fun and love. Love is building in the locker room, playing for each other. That's such a special part of being on a team, and we can feel it building. Fun and love. Love is building in the locker room." Yeah, that's a good vibe. When I heard that last night, in my mind, in the playlist of my line, I'm like, oh, let me find this. Where's that old Pretender song? Where's Chrissy Hine? The song "Message of Love," right? And so I think Bennington needs to do that on karaoke. I can't wait for him. He ought to say this at next time they win a game and they're all feeling the love, right? The reason we're here is to love each other, to take care of each other. When love walks in the room, everybody stand up. You're dang right, Chrissy Hine. That's one of my favorite songs by them. And yeah, that music still matters. All right. Thank you. All right. That works for me. And I think Bennington, like I mentioned, Bennington needs to do some karaoke on that. Another song I thought about, I guess it's appropriate because Bennington was talking about love and they were talking about Good Vibrations. Well, yeah, the famous Pet Sounds album, Good Vibrations. That's Brian Wilson's masterpiece. Maybe the Blues are going through some good vibrations right now. You know what it is? Winning is fun. The Blues are having fun and they enjoy being teammates. So they're in a really good place right now. Let's look at this, and I'm going to look at the two different things because right before the Four Nations break, and then then after they return from the Four Nations break, this is what they've done since February the 8th. That's the last 8 games. The Blues are 5th in the NHL for best points percentage. Since February 23rd, that's the last 6 games, 5-1. Their .833 points percentage is tied for 3rd in the league. During their 5-1 streak, the more recent streak, the Blues have scored 70% of the goals at even strength. 70%, 21 goals for, 9 against. That's just nuts. They've been the best team in the league at 5-on-5 over the last 6 games, the 3rd best team at 5-on-5 in the league in their last 8 games. And really, we'll get to this in a couple minutes. Since Jim Montgomery took over on November the 25th, the Blues have been one of the very best 5-on-5 teams in the National Hockey League. You have individual players stepping up. You have Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich on the same line, and they're on fire. They've got 7 goals and 15 assists combined in the last 8 games. Captain Brayden Schenn's got a goal and 7 assists in the last 8 games. He's really playing well. During the 6-1-1 stretch, the longer stretch that just began just before that Four Nations, the Blues have gotten goals from 13 different players. 6 guys have scored at least 3, 9 have banked at least 2 over that time. And we stay with the last 8 games. Blues defensemen have combined for 8 goals and 15 assists. So they're getting offense from the blue line. The duo of Parayko and Fowler, or as I like to refer to them as the Colton Cam defensive pairing, they've been great. When they've been on the ice during this 8-game stretch, the Blues have outscored opponents 5-on-5, something like 9-4, might even be 10-4. The combo of Justin Falk and Philip Broberg has been really strong. That pairing has been strong over these same 8 games. So the Blues, and when you know about the goaltending, Bennington's back. He settled in. He got a high from that incredible win where he stole the gold medal from the United States in the Four Nations final. Just an incredible performance. But judging by how the Blues have come on strong after it would have been easy to kind of pack it in, at least mentally, emotionally. Judging by that and judging by what the players are saying, it's clear that Coach Jim Montgomery has indeed gotten a response from this team. And that's what I was wondering about. Are these guys doing it again? Are they as soon as something goes wrong and they get a little down and then they mope around and it takes them way too long to get back at it. And they had one of those lulls. After that initial surge under Montgomery, the Blues went into a 10-13-3 lull. They flatlined, and that quieted all the playoff talk. And I felt mad because I'm like, yeah, Army, go out and do some stuff. Make a trade. Go for it. This team's worth it. And I felt stupid because I really bought into that initial surge under Montgomery. But I should know better is what I'm trying to say, because I've been around here long enough to know that the Blues, for some reason, it's a franchise tradition. Their players lead the league in mood swings every year. You never know what you're going to get, even when there's a lot of talent. A lot of moody guys, right? But Montgomery is clearly making progress in his attempt to reset the team's culture, which is badly needed. And the Blues' scoring rate has improved since Monty took over on November the 25th. More than anything, and this is what I wanted to mention. So this is not a fluke what the Blues are doing here of late, because they've been doing it since he became the coach. They are a highly effective team at 5-on-5, and that is the foundation of hockey, along with you got to have good goaltending. But 5-on-5 hockey basically identifies who you really are. And in his 41 games as coach, The Blues have scored 58% of the goals at 5-on-5. That's the second best rate among NHL teams since he became the coach. And let me break it down a little bit more for you. Since that time, his 41 games, the Blues rank fifth in the league with an average of 2.61 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. And they're third in the NHL at preventing goals, giving up only 1.92 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. So when you are, in terms of your offense, the fifth best in the league at 5-on-5 over 41 games, and you're the third best in the NHL at preventing goals over the last 31 games on a rate basis, that's a team with a strong foundation, especially when the goaltenders play well. Now, all of this said, I'm a realist, and I think the Blues are still up against it in their mission to seize a wildcard spot. They have two teams ahead of them for the second spot in the West, or I should say the third spot in the West. That would be Calgary and Vancouver. They each have 67 points, and the Blues are next at 66. But that's a little misleading in that the Blues have played two more games than Calgary and two more games than Vancouver. But on the other hand, the Blues have the easiest remaining schedule in the league, according to Tankathon. And according to Money Puck, the Blues have a 28% chance of making the playoffs. And that seems about right to me. And one of the reasons it seems right to me, because I went back to Money Puck and I looked, well, what about Vancouver? Well, they have a 37.6% crack of making the playoffs. That's nearly 10% higher than the Blues. And for Calgary, the probability to make the playoffs is 30.4%, which is, not that far above the Blues. But the point is, the Blues got some work to do. They got to play really well, and they got to stack up points. And they're also going to need some help because there's only one head-to-head meeting with those teams they're trying to catch, and that is on March 30th when the Vancouver Canucks come into the Enterprise Center. But here we go again. There's a lot of ways to look at this. If the remaining strength of schedule means anything serious, the Blues could get the help they need because, as I mentioned, the Blues have the NHL's easiest remaining schedule, which gives them, in theory, a smoother path. But Vancouver's got the fourth toughest schedule left. Calgary's got the 11th most difficult schedule left. So maybe the Blues will get some help, and that's part of it. But they can also take care of their own business. Well, I saved this part for the last, because there's been a lot of talk, a lot of conjecture about Brayden Schenn, the team captain. Is he going to get traded? Some teams have been calling Doug Armstrong. Listen, I don't believe Armstrong will trade Schenn unless it's some kind of really generous offer. And even then, I'm not sure what he would do. The Schenn situation is potentially troubling long-term. Again, I'm not pie in the sky here. He's got 3 more seasons left on his contract at an average of $6.5 million a year, and that covers his seasons of age 34, 35, and 36. So how bad will the decline been? There's already been some decline. He's playing well recently, but there's been some decline that set in, and you figure that's only going to get worse. So, pragmatically, that's one way to look at it. Well, boy, they could get stuck with that contract for another 3 years. But with the Blues playing spirited hockey and knowing how much teammates love and respect Braden Schenn, I'd be surprised to see Armstrong move Schenn in a salary dump, just a flat-out salary dump. And that's what it would be. Sure, there are some teams that would want Schenn for a low-cost trade and give the Blues some nominal draft pick or whatever. I don't know. But as I mentioned, I'm a pragmatist, so I can see the value of moving a guy like him if it means offloading a total of $19.5 million in salary commitments over the next 3 seasons. There would be a benefit in doing that. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But that's the thing. There's the pragmatic side, and then there's the realistic side. The pragmatic side, you can make a strong case for moving Schenn and to set yourself up better salary cap wise for the near future. That's the pragmatic side. That's the outsider side. But the only side that matters is the reality side, and the reality is whatever Doug Armstrong wants it to be. And I just can't see him dumping Schenn. And remember, Army personally chose Schenn to be the team captain after trading Ryan O'Reilly into Toronto at the 23 deadline. But that was a different type of deal because O'Reilly was in his walk year and the Blues were not going to sign him as a free agent. And the O'Reilly trade was part of a much larger sell-off that sent Vladimir Tarasenko, Nico Mikala of Ivan Barbashev, pardon me, to their new teams. Army divested those walk-year players for draft picks, a couple of whom may turn out really well, and prospect Zach Dean in the Barbashev deal. And that was a good pickup at the time, but he has had trouble staying healthy. Injuries have really kind of wrecked his current season. But they did get some assets during a soft rebuild in exchange for players they were not going to re-sign back to the team. But the Schenn situation is different than that. And the Schenn situation is different from the circumstances that motivated Doug Armstrong to deal Paul Stastny to Winnipeg for a first-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and prospect Eric Foley back in 2018 at this time. Listen, yeah, the Blues were 1 point out of a playoff spot then at the time of the trade, but they had gone 0-6-1 in their previous 7 games. And even at that point, man, there was no good reason for Armstrong to have a lot of faith in that team. At the time, they were 6 points out of a playoff spot, and they had 3 teams in front of them, and they were playing terrible hockey. The irony, of course, is that they rallied and actually came within a point of making the playoffs, but that didn't change my mind whatsoever. At the time Army made that trade, it was the sensible trade to make because they weren't going to bring Paul Stastny back, and he was going to become a free agent, and teams were going to be throwing money at him. So the deal made sense at the time. Now, the Blues don't have a lot to show for that trade. Eric Foley never played for them because he was a good prospect, but he had all kinds of nasty concussion problems and basically retired. One of the draft picks they got was used in the deal they made with Carolina for defenseman Justin Falk. So I just wanted to kind of recap that part of it. Doug Armstrong, and this is another big factor, I think. Doug Armstrong has got one more season to go. After this one more at the end of 25-26. He'll turn over the general manager's job to Alexander Steen. And I think it's important to Army for the Blues to get back into the postseason after failing to make it the past 2 seasons. I think it's important for Army and Chairman Tom Stillman to get some home playoff action. Not only good for the fan morale and the fan enthusiasm, Blues fans are unbelievable, but also because from a revenue standpoint, they could use 1 or 2 postseason games or whatever. But missing the playoffs in a 3rd year in a row, I think it would really sting for the Blues, the pride that they have for being so consistent. They haven't missed out on the postseason for 3 consecutive years since that really dark time, that really awful, awful time. There was the lockout, the lost season. Coming out of the lockout, Bill Laurie, who owned the team, decided, that's it, I'm done. He ordered Mark Sauer to all right, sell off pieces. We trade that Pronger contract. That's at the top of the list. Get rid of that Pronger contract because he had just signed a very long-term extension. Bill Laurie's theory is that he wanted to have clean books because if there wasn't a lot of huge payroll that a new owner would inherit, it would be easier to sell the Blues and to get a better price for the Blues. I don't know whether he was right or wrong. I know it was a travesty to have Chris Pronger win a Stanley Cup somewhere else. Okay. But they haven't missed out on the postseason since that dark time. Let me recap real quick. Missed season, the whole league. Blues had the worst record in the league in the 2005-2006 season. And then they improved somewhat, but they missed the playoffs 2 more years after that. I don't think Army wants to go back to those days and have the first Blues team to miss the playoffs 3 years in a row. Hey, there were a lot of bad vibes back then, really bad vibes. And trading Schenn right now, the deadline's tomorrow, it would probably, I think, absolutely damage morale at a team at a time when the team is rocking and rolling and feeling the good vibration. So it doesn't matter what me as a pragmatist says or thinks. It doesn't matter. It's what is in Doug Armstrong's in his heart and whether he believes in this team. I think he does. I think he wants to give them a chance to make the playoffs, and he's not going to basically do anything to undermine that. Some of you might say, and by the way, you're not going to get any lip from me. Some of you are going to say, well, but they wouldn't go far in the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, I know it's a long shot, but they could win in that draft lottery. They could end up with a lottery pick. You never know. Those are all valid points to make. It really is. But the thing of it is, I just don't think Doug Armstrong, in effect, is going to give up on this team the way they have responded under the new coach. And this is also one of the reasons he's not going to pull the plug by trading Schenn, is because he's not going to do that to Jim Montgomery when Montgomery is doing a good job of sort of rebranding the Blues and sort of, creating a new culture. I don't think Army wants to pull the plug on his new coach either, because Doug, listen to me talking, man, it goes so fast. I'm so excited. Montgomery's going to be here a long time, so you want to make sure that you're signaling to your fans, this is a new year. Listen, we're back in the playoffs. And if you don't make the playoffs, listen, it ain't the end of the world. And you're going to have some money to work with starting July 1st. And you're going to still have a good team coming back next season. That's the way I feel. If you disagree, that's cool, because there's plenty of room for reasonable disagreement. So that's all I got to say for now. I appreciate all this time with you today. Thanks for watching. And we'll see what the Blues do after. Where do they go next? So they're on the West Coast, and they're going to play the Kings again. It's a 3-game trip, one down, got to win, see what they do the final 2 games. But the trade deadline will be over as of Friday afternoon. So that was the last game last night before the trade deadline. So we'll see what Doug Armstrong does, if he does anything at all. Thank you very much.